Hey study buddies, so today we're going to be looking at price elasticity of supply. This is the responsiveness of quantity supplied to price changes. As you can see in this formula here, we have the percent change in quantity supplied over the percent change in the price. So again, that's showing you what's going to happen to the quantity supplied if we change the price. And so I'm going to write out the formula here into more detail so it's easier when you solve problems and you can use that as a base. All right, so there you have it. That's your equation, and that can help you out when you're solving problems. So Q2 minus Q1 divided by the Q of average. So basically Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. All over P2 minus P1 divided by P average. So P1 plus P2 divided by 2. So similar to elasticity of demand, supply has elastic and inelastic supply. So elastic supply is when the percent change in quantity supplied is greater than your percent change in price. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look at a graph. So let's say we have our price over here and it changes from here to here. And we had our elastic supply. Your percent change in quantity supplied is a lot compared to your percent change in price. So that shows you that you have elastic supply and your elasticity of supply would be greater than 1. Now what happens if we had inelastic supply? And we had the same thing, the same idea of price changes. Well, inelastic supply is when the percent change in quantity supplied is less than your percent change in price. So just like this. Well, if we show our price change from here to here, there's only a small change in your quantity supplied, as you can see, which is represented by this axis. And so what you would have is inelastic supply would be in between 0 and 1. So that is essentially your price elasticity of supply. A similar problem would be like the example we did in price elasticity of demand. We're not going to go through an example of this because this one is more so straightforward. We're going to move on to our income elasticity. So income elasticity is the responsiveness of a product's quantity demanded to changes in consumer income. So we looked at factors previously and we know that changes in consumer income can impact what they are willing to buy, or also known as what is their quantity demanded. So we have a formula right here. I'm going to write out the full thing, and it's essentially your percent change in quantity demanded over your percent change in income. So there you have the full formula. You have Q2 minus Q1 divided by your Q average over I2 minus I1 divided by your I average. I, also known as your income. Now, what does the value that is produced mean? Well, there are a couple of meanings. So let's say that our value is less than 0. If our value is less than 0, then we can say this is an inferior good. Now, why could we say that? Well, that's because our income would be positively changing. Let's say it's changing in a positive way, so we're growing income. Well, our quantity demanded must be negative for it to be less than 0, right? So that means that we have a decrease in our quantity demanded as our income increases. And that's the same relationship as an inferior good, because we know that as your income increases, you'll want to buy less of, you'll want to demand less of that good. So that's how you know that's an inferior good. When it's greater than 0, you know it's a normal good because, of course, they shift in the same manner. They're both either going to be positive or they're both going to be negative on the top and the bottom. And so if your income rises, so there's a positive change, there's going to be a positive change in the quantity demanded. And you know that means that it's a normal good. Now, to go even more into detail, though, when it's in between 0 and 1, it would be a necessary good. Okay, because that means that change in income, although it's so large compared to the change in quantity demanded, that shows that there wouldn't be much change in quantity demanded. So it is a necessary good, because even if your income changes, your quantity demanded is still going to remain intact. Your luxury good is going to be greater than 1. Which makes sense because if your income increases or decreases, you have a much larger change in quantity demanded. And so that means that it's not really necessary for you to have this good. So that is your income elasticity. We're going to take a look at an example. So let's see this. So when Rosa's income increases from 95,000, so our income 1 is equal to 95,000 to 10,500. Income 2 is 10,500. Her quantity demanded of good X increased from 23 units, so this is 1, to 45 units, so Q2 is 45. Now we want to find what is the income elasticity of demand for the good. I wrote what? There you go. Is income elasticity of demand for good X. So let's write out our formula first so we could have it written. All right, so now that we have our income elasticity equation written down, we're going to plug in these values. So we have Q2, which we know is 45, minus 23, all divided by their average. So 45 plus 23 divided by 2. Stop the video, calculate it. You'll get 34. I2 minus I1, so you have 10,500 minus 95,000. And divided by the average between the two, you can calculate it, and it's going to be 100,000. Now that you have all those values, we're just going to plug them into our calculator and calculate it. So stop the video, take a moment to try it out. And you're going to get 6.47. So now we might want to see, okay, well, what type of good is this then? Well, we know that this is going to be a luxury good since it's greater than 1. Why? Well, that's because the change in quantity demanded is much larger than the percentage change in income. And so, even though your income changes, your quantity changes by a lot more, which is why it is greater than 1. So we have over here a luxury good. Awesome. Okay, finally, we have our cross-price elasticity. So cross-price elasticity is the responsiveness of the quantity demanded of one product, X, to a change in price of another, which is Y. So we know that another factor is the changes in prices of other goods. So here we're trying to look at how does a change in the price of a different good affect the change in quantity demanded of the good that we're looking at. So I'm going to write out the full formula. So there is the full formula. It's very similar to our other formulas, but now you're looking at the price of a different good and how it's affecting your quantity demanded of good X. Okay, so what does the value we produce mean? Well, let's take a look at that. So let's say we have a value that is less than 0. If it's less than 0, then it is going to be a complementary good. We know that as the price of another good increases, the price, so let's say we're looking at good Y, so as the price of good Y increases, the quantity demanded of good X is going to decrease if they are complementary goods. So as you can see, the price of good Y is increasing, so that's positive. But the quantity demanded of good X is decreasing, so it's negative. And that's why it is less than 0 and considered a complementary good. So you just got to think back at what does it mean to be a complementary good? How does it affect the good? Why is this value going to be less than 0? Well, it's because they have that sort of relationship where they're moving in different directions. Now let's take a look at this. When it's greater than 0, it substitutes. There's substitute goods. Now, why? Take a moment to think about it. And this is like by looking at our formula. You could see, okay, if the price is increasing in a positive manner of good Y, and good X is a substitute for it. So the price of this is increasing, good X is a substitute. Well, people are going to want to consume good X. So the quantity demanded of good X will also increase. So they're both going to be positive. So essentially, the top and bottom here is both positive, but whereas with complementary goods, it could be causative, negative, negative, positive. Okay? So now we're going to take a look at an example of cross-price elasticity. So when the price of good Y is $45, the quantity demanded of good X is 1,350. So we have the price 1 is 45. The Q1 is 1,350. When the price of good Y falls to $35, so P2 equals 35, Q2 equals 1,100. What is the cross price elasticity of demand? So I'm going to write down the formula and then we're going to plug everything in. All right, so there we have the formula. Let's plug everything in now. So we have Q2, which is 1,100 minus 1,350 divided by the average of the two, which is 1,225, all over 35 minus 45 divided by the average between the two, which is 40. Now take a moment to calculate that, and you'll see that you get 0.82, which means that you have a good that is a substitute for each other, right? Because it is greater than 0. And I forgot to mention here that it could also be negative and negative, which it is in this case. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for watching.